Hello everybody and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I want to go over the 5 cards that belong in literally every single cEDH deck. Doesn't matter what you're playing, doesn't matter what your strategy is, these 5 cards all go in your deck. But before I get to that, I made a goal at the end of last year that I wanted to reach 100 subscribers by the end of the year. Now, that goal kind of got blown out of the water with 152 subscribers, literally doubling my subscriber count within like 2 weeks. In addition to that, the video that I released for the 5 most common mistakes in cEDH got over 2.4k views. That's a lot. So I'm kind of taken aback by it all, but I want to start this new year strong and keep the train rolling. So I also promised I would do a live stream for Q&A session, and I would let people vote on my next deck that I'd play in my next monthly tournament. So this Monday at noon PST, I am going to be live streaming on YouTube for the Q&A session, and I will let people vote on any deck at all that I should play in my next monthly cEDH tournament. Also, I'm going to Silicon Dynasty. So I actually have to pack for that, like right now after recording this, but yeah, you can find me at Silicon Dynasty this weekend, and you can find me wearing this hoodie, the one that says Choir Nut on it, because it's the brand. I'm a choir boy, I have to. But with that said, let's get into the 5 cards that belong in literally every single cEDH deck. Starting off with number 5. Number 5 is Soul Ring. You know that you love it, the classic commander staple. I think it goes in literally every single deck. It doesn't matter what you're playing, because just being able to have access to at least 4 mana if you just cast Soul Ring on turn 1 is really, really, really strong. Even if you're playing things like Stacks archetypes, or you're playing things like your fast combo or your mid-range decks, no matter what you're playing, you benefit substantially by having 4 mana on turn 2. For example, let's say that you go turn 1 land, Soul Ring, turn 2 you cast Collector Oof and maybe a Dryneth Magistrate or something. Even though you're shutting off your own Soul Ring, it allows you to still present 2 very notable stacked pieces in play by turn 2. And now let's go to number 4 on our list, which is Mana Crypt. Mana Crypt is very similar to Soul Ring, although it's 0 mana instead of 1. Mana Crypt is on this list for many of the same reasons as Soul Ring, but it can be even more impactful on the first turn of the game. Where Soul Ring requires you to spend mana in order to cast it, Mana Crypt being free allows you to cast 3 drops on turn 1, notable things like Rhystic Study, or let's say a Rule of Law effect, or even if you're not using all of the colorless mana, just being able to play a land, a Mana Crypt, into your Dryneth Magistrate or your Dockside Extortionist or whatever on turn 1 is extremely powerful. Now, the reason that I put those 2 as number 5 and number 4 respectively is because there is at least some precedent with exactly one deck that has done really well in tournaments that was omitting Soul Ring and Mana Crypt, that being Charles the Mono White Guy's Mono White Heliod deck that made top 4 in Marchesa in 2022. That said, when we move on to our number 3 and our number 2 picks, not even Charles the Mono White Guy was omitting these from his list. Number 3, we have Mox Diamond. Now, at surface level, this reads, you lose your land drop for your next turn because you are basically playing it this turn, and it's vulnerable to things like Collector Oof or Null Rod. But, once again, like we have demonstrated with the other cards earlier, having 1 additional mana on turn 1 is very, very impactful. And it's also notably, unlike number 5 and number 4, it is a colored mana on turn 1. This allows you to do things like, say you play your land, your Mox Diamond, you pitch a land, cast a Mystic Remora and a Mana Dork in 1 turn. That same type of play pattern is not possible using Mana Crypt or Soul Ring in the same opening hand. Now, a lot of people have complained that they don't often see enough lands in their opening hand to make Mox Diamond worth it, or that it's only worth it in ad nauseum decks, and I strictly disagree. Just having access to more mana on turn 1 is always a good thing, whether you are a proactive deck or a slower deck. One of my fellow reviewers for the cEDH Decklist database put it very well in my opinion. If the format, in general, is very fast, it helps mid-range and stacks decks keep pace with the fast ad nauseam decks or proactive combo decks. Alternatively, if the format is very slow, those cards help you get ahead of the curve and still present your things earlier in turn order than your opponents. So no matter what, the fast mana is always going to be very strong in the format, and Mox Diamond is one of those key pieces. Now, number 2 on our list, we have a card that doesn't have any of the previous issues of any of the other cards, that card being Chrome Mox. Now, Chrome Mox allows you to play it and exile a card from your hand to make it produce mana of that color. Now, a lot of people complain about this, going, it's negative on card advantage, or it also gets shut off by Collector Ooh for Null Rod, which is true, but once again, having access to additional mana on turn 1 is always very important. And even if you were getting rid of, say, the worst card in your hand, being able to present a more powerful card in your hand a turn earlier is almost always going to be worth it. So for example, say you have a 1 mana dork, or like you have a Birds of Paradise or something. You could play that Birds of Paradise on turn 1 and then give yourself 3 mana on turn 2. Or alternatively, if you play a Chrome Mox and pitch the Birds of Paradise under it, and you have a Priest of Titania in your hand or something, you get to play the Priest of Titania instead. You still present 3 mana on turn 2, assuming you're not making your land drop, but if you do, then you're now making 4 mana instead. And if you have a 4-mana commander, something like Ragged Gorguts Boss, or Captain Sisay, or hell, even some other things like Yasharn Implacable Earth, anything that allows you to put a significant piece on the board a turn earlier is very, very important, and Chrome Mox helps you get there while also giving you additional mana and more explosive plays. Now finally, the last card in this list, number 1 on the list, doesn't matter if you're playing any null-routed effects in your deck, doesn't matter if, even if you have like Kataki War's Wage in your command zone, that would make you sacrifice all of your artifacts. This one card belongs in every single deck, and there are literally no exceptions whatsoever. This card is Gemstone Caverns. Gemstone Caverns, much like the Mox Diamond and the Chrome Mox, allows you to pitch a card at the start of the game in order to have it in play. Now this also opens you up to several forms of interaction that you can have on turn 0. Say you have a Flusterstorm, but the person who's going first has this turn 1 ad nauseum and they're really going off. But you have a Flusterstorm, you can actually interact. Say there's a turn 1 Godo or something and you have a Swords to Plowshares, or a Nature's Claim. It still allows you to interact on turn 1 where the other ones do not give you mana, at least until your turn. In addition, Gemstone Caverns also allows you to do things like Enlightened Tutor or Vampiric Tutor in somebody's end step to sculpt your opening hand even better. So with that said, that is the 5 cards that I think belong in literally every single cEDH deck, with no exceptions. Now with that said, I gotta get packing for Silicon Dynasty. Y'all have a good one, and I'll see you next time.